Hello everyone, and welcome to the webinar on getting started with Jenkins. My name is Ashish Nanotkar and I am a DevOps coach by profession. Today we are going to look into what Jenkins is all about. Okay, so there have been a lot of buzz regarding DevOps, right? Since last 2 years or so. A lot of people are jumping to this, and everybody is a lot of concerned about setting up their build and release pipeline. Now this build and release pipeline is actually divided into three different parts, and we would be getting into details of it and where Jenkins fit and how do we connect to it, right, with the other tools which are in the ecosystem. But before starting off with this presentation, can I have a quick confirmation from you guys that you are able to hear my voice and also see the slides? You can type in your chat boxes or raise your hands. Cool guys, thanks. So I'll just um, tell you how we are going to interact. So you could type in your chat boxes like you have already done. If you want to discuss anything with me or ask queries person to person, you can just raise your hands. Whenever I get a logical break, I would be unmuting you and then we can discuss. Okay, sounds good. So we were talking of DevOps release and build mechanisms. So you know that the code starts right away from the develop machine, and we need some sort of version control systems in place, right? So the code moves from your developed machine to the version control systems, then it moves uh, on different systems that would be there for automation checking and automatically building the stuff, then deploying it, configuring the systems, configuring the software, setting up the stuff, monitoring, logging, and a whole bunch of things. Well, but what is that all about? And where does continuous integration fall in this complete release cycle? Okay, what is continuous integration in the first place? Is it different from what people call as continuous deployment or continuous delivery? If it is different, what is it exactly? We'll see what is Jenkins, of course, as software, right? So if you are attending this webinar, you already know a bit about what Jenkins is. You must have heard it. So we'll get to know what it is and how it stands, okay, and what are the importance of it. How do we make it deliver what we want to achieve out of it, and why do we want to install it in first place? Why not some other softwares? Okay, so we'll be talking about that. We'll be setting up Jenkins, configuring all of it all by ourselves, and setting it up in our network inside our own environment. We would be setting up some jobs. I'll get a repository from GitHub. We'll play along with it. We'll also have a small demo on how to trigger Maven targets using Jenkins. So if you're a developer working on Java projects, you know what I'm talking of. Either you would be using Ant or you would be Maven, would be using Maven for building your code, all right, or packaging it for deployments onto your web server or application server, whatever it is. Okay, and after discussing, we will at the meantime also see a live demo on how to do all this stuff. Okay, so that you get a hands-on approach and you can ask targeted questions. Well, we are all aware since our college days of the waterfall model, the old software days, right? Everything goes step by step and it has to be controlled by different teams. So let's say we are working on a very big project and a few of my team members are developing the code. Testing team still waits for the code to be finished. Unless and until the features are all developed, they wouldn't be starting testing. So what would they do? They are generally ported to another project. So if that project takes longer to finish, they wouldn't be ported back to our own project or so. This is how the system was working earlier. Now, since the adoption of agile methodologies in the software development, people have started doing their work more faster and in parallel. So what they do is they don't develop the complete software, they develop the things in bit and pieces. So I have got daily achievable goals for myself. My manager would say that, okay, these are your sprints, these are your daily tasks, achieve the task at end of the day. Okay, I find it cool too because every day I don't have anything left over for the tomorrow's part. Okay, so one thing at a time, the software builds itself. So if I'm completing one feature at a time, my tester doesn't have to wait. He can test it as soon as it's finished, and he can get the work regularly. So he doesn't have to wait for weeks or months for the complete software to be ready and then test it. What he can do is incrementally test the stuff. While all these things are happening, you can easily figure out the redundant work. Developers wouldn't be doing any redundant work because they are developing new features every day. But from a tester's perspective, he would be testing the code. He would be testing the feature which already exists because he need to test the regression part of it, whether the newly added features are making something difficult or breaking something which is already running very smoothly on the system. If you're testing the same thing again and again, it's a human tendency that you tend to overlook a few aspects of it. Maybe there are 100 test cases that you want to test, but you already know that the feature is working fine. You test it once, it's working fine. You test it twice, it still works. You test it thrice, still works. Fourth time, you happen to skip a few test cases if you're doing it manually. And we don't want to do it manually now. So what I want to do is, whenever a developer commits something, or even before committing, what he needs to do is, he needs to build the stuff all on his machine once, do some functional level testing, write the unit test case all by himself and figure out if it's working. If it's working, commit it. Jenkins, which is a continuous integration server. Now the continuous integration phase starts from the point where developer commits the code. As soon as the code is out from the developed machine, in earlier days what people used to do is there was a separate team that would be merging the code from different branches. So there were different teams working on diversified areas of the bigger project on separate modules. These days we also follow the same, but the integration part or merging part, okay, and choosing the different software packages and bundling them together, then deploying it. All this is done automatically, and Jenkins helps us just do that. Okay, so integration part, which was tough, merging, which was tough because there used to be a lot of code conflicts. Now we are setting up the build and release mechanisms or the steps via which the code would move in such a way that people would be getting lesser amount of conflicts or even no conflicts in the base scenarios. They would be working on different branches in isolation. Even then, the integration phase would be seemingly very, very smooth because that happens because of the softwares. No people or no person is responsible for integrating your software now. Okay, and we'll see just that. So this build and release pipeline that I was talking of, it is actually divided into three different parts. The first one, continuous integration, starts from the point where developer commits the code. Now there are multiple steps to it. So from the point where the code reaches your continuous integration, your revision control system, to the part where your packages are actually formed, deployable packages are formed, it's all continuous integration. So integrating the code, integrating the modules, integrating the tools together to generate feedback loops. So what is the target of continuous integration? Continuous integration, it targets to achieve uh, catching of bugs. It doesn't fix the bugs. It says that we are not going to get rid of bugs, but what we are going to do is we are going to create feedback loops for you. So whenever you commit something off your system, we would be generating a feedback loop at every step. So either we set up a pre-commit hook for you, or we set up a pre-commit hook on the server side. We set up a post-commit hook using maybe Jenkins or on the server side. What we would be testing is, we would be testing for syntax, we would be testing for semantics, we would be testing for the response times that your application is generating, we would be testing for all the unit tests cases if they are passing. We are going to test for all the functional tests if they get through. All the dependency checks that your system requires, we will be bundling your packages, okay, and then try to deploy it somewhere. And all these things are a part of continuous integration. At any point in time, if the step fails, we would be looping the content back to the developer who started that. Well, how does it help? It helps in bringing sense of responsibility to the team. If you're talking of a DevOps culture, it's not about setting up the tools or being technically very strong, knowing all these things. Well, that is a part of it. But the important part of DevOps comes and really shines when you're a very good cultural DevOps team. What I mean by culture is that people are more responsible. They have sense of responsibility and ownership of their own code. So if I'm writing one single line of code, um, I'm responsible for it until the code hits the production systems. Okay. If it goes to production, everything is running fine, that's when my responsibility finishes off. At any point in time, maybe even after 2 weeks, if anything goes wrong because of that code and someone figures out that it's wrong, I'm the person who would be the owner of it ultimately. So no one takes credit for your work. That's the best part. Imagine in a big company where you would be doing something and your boss takes a credit for all your work. Maybe you're creating presentations or you did some nice piece of innovation there, but you're not getting any credit for it or no appreciation for it. This is not a DevOps culture that we are looking for. Okay, and CI systems helps us just form that, because we are going to identify the developers who are setting up the things, the testers who are actually writing the unit test case and testing it, and everyone is accountable for the particular piece of code that they are writing. So what are the benefits of CI? Catch the issues fast and nip them in the bud. What we mean by this is, we know that the softwares fail. We are aware of it. We do not deny it. Even if we are going to implement agile technologies into our softwares, we don't say that we are going to create bug-free programs. It's that if you are supposed to be failing, fail fast. Fail before you reach the production line so that you could catch the bugs in time, fix them, reiterate over them, think over them, okay, and then release it again outside. And whom do we trust on this? We trust the computers on it because they cannot commit any mistakes. Everyone can see what's happening. It's a completely transparent system. Since you create feedback loops, I'll show you one loop that we are creating using Jenkins. Um, Even if let's say you commit something, you haven't tested it, just because you were in a lot of hurry and you want to get the code out to production. So mistakenly you forget it to add a semicolon back in your C code or in your Java code. So what Jenkins would do, it try to test it, right? The first test would be at the syntax levels. If it fails, it would immediately send you a mail that, dude, you did something wrong here, okay? Fix it as soon as possible. So you would be responsible for it. The mail triggers you and you get a mail within a few minutes or maybe even a few seconds, who knows? So if that is happening, you are still in the same context. You haven't switched your brain, okay? So what generally happens, what was used to happen in the older days is that we used to code something, and after the features are completely created, I've tested my own features, unit tested it, it works fine, but I'm not aware of the complete features of the whole software. There might be thousands of features, so I'm not the one who is responsible for them, so I didn't test that. I just tested my piece of code. It works fine. After a few months, when the code was completely ready for deployment, a tester comes back to me and says that, dude, you wrote this particular code 2 months back. Now I'm willing to change it because it's causing some problem. So even I don't remember what I ate 3 days back. If you are from a programming background, you know that if you are given a code which you yourself wrote even a week back, you wouldn't be able to understand it. You'll have to read it once completely. Okay, so that doesn't have to be done now in the CI. What it would do is it would read it right away. It would get you the feedback loop. You don't switch your context. You're still in there. You know what has to be done. You fix it, commit it again, and you're done. That's how we make it faster. We automate the systems. We don't want people to test the stuff manually. As much as things you can do on the coding side, it's good. What we target is we target a code coverage of almost more than 85%. Okay, in the average scenarios, the best case scenarios are more than 95% of code coverage. People have written code coverage that is almost 100%. Okay, so write the unit test cases that would test your code in every nook and corner so that you know everything is working fine. CI systems help you in building the code very fast. How is it made fast? Let's say I'm generating the code for any security system that has to be deployed on multiple operating systems. And if I were a person trying to test it one by one, I would take maybe days or weeks to finish it off. What my CI system could do is it could run the jobs parallelly. It could build it on individual operating systems in parallel. And this parallel configuration can help reduce the time to just minutes instead of hours or days or weeks. Okay, we stop waiting to find out if the code is going to work. We know it is going to work or it's going to fail as soon as possible. All right, so this continuous integration, it generates the artifacts which are supposed to be deployed, and where they are supposed to be deployed. Before deploying it to the production, we test it in the pre-production area. Now this pre-production area would be in a production like configuration, or it would be on production itself, but the live traffic cannot hit it. It cannot reach it. Okay, so this is where continuous deployment happens, and this is done by your CI systems itself. So there are multiple build steps that you would be adding later on. I'll show you how to add that. Um, and then we can take care of deploying the code onto those machines. Now there are different configuration management systems as well that would help you in setting up the stuff. Either you use Chef or you use Puppet, but triggering them has to be done with your CI system ultimately. There are multiple softwares available in the market for CI. If you're looking for a tool that should do CI as well as deployments, Bamboo is a tool. Then there is a TeamCity, which helps you do the deployments as well. From my perspective, Jenkins is the one which is uh, really good at uh, capturing all the surrounding ecosystem tools. Whatever you have can integrate with Jenkins. Okay, if you want integrated deployment systems, Jenkins doesn't provide it right away. So what Jenkins is, it's only a framework. If you look at Jenkins without any plugins, okay, there's a big community that helps Jenkins by delivering that plugins which are deployable or attachable in Jenkins, providing it multiple features, but the features are provided by plugins. Jenkins itself does not stand anywhere. Okay, so if you want to run a Maven job, you need to install Maven plugin. If you want to run a GitHub integration, or you want to integrate it with the Subversion, you need to have some plugins installed. But it's really good that Jenkins comes shipped with, or it ships with few of the plugins already installed that would help you get the stuff up and running very fast. But if you want some customized stuff, you always need to have plugins, and they're always there. There are thousands of plugins which are available with Jenkins that will help you to integrate any tool that is available in market. Any. Okay, at least I didn't found any of the tool that wouldn't be integrated with Jenkins. You call it Sonar, you call it Nagios, you call PagerDuty, you call it a chat messaging system, or a notification system, or integration with Git, Perforce, or even Mercurial, or any code revision system, or maybe code review system. If you talk of like Garrett would be there, or a review board would be there, any tools. Okay, so that's the reason why we are using Jenkins. It's free, it's open source, it can be downloaded for any of the use free of cost, and you guys also use it in the enterprise level. Of course, support is paid, but we are not going there for now. There are a lot of companies who are Jenkins, and you can also access their Jenkins board from public. One of such Jenkins boards or dashboards which are available for public is for Apache projects, which I know. So you could go and check it out. So let's see, how do we play with Jenkins? Okay, so here there would be a few slides that we are going to follow. Okay, and I would be giving a live demo right away. I wouldn't wait till end of this presentation to give the demo, because that wouldn't make sense. So we'll go with the slides, at the same time we will be playing with the demo. So for this demo, what I need is, I need a virtual box. So I'd be setting up one. I'm cloning it from a base machine on which I have Ubuntu 14.04 installed, server version installed. It's not a desktop version, and I will call this machine as Jenkins. During installation and stuff, we would be waiting for a few minutes. You can utilize that those span of time to ask any questions you want, or need any. If you need any clarification, you are always welcome. Okay, here's a question. The question is, on which container does the default Jenkins package runs? That means which application server supports running Jenkins. Jenkins comes in with its own server. Okay, so it uses Jetty engine by default. You can also use Tomcat for deploying it. So there's a WAR file that you can download. If you don't want to install the package version of Jenkins, you can always download the WAR version, which you can set up or deploy in any of the application server that supports Java. Okay, so my machines are ready, and I would be spinning it. So how to install Jenkins? Very first, get your machines ready. Whatever machine you are using, Jenkins is able to support that. You can install Jenkins on Windows, on Linux, on multiple Linux flavors. So you could set it up on Ubuntu as well as CentOS or RHEL boxes. I'm using Ubuntu. I want to be light on resource utilization. That's why I'm using it. So the version of Ubuntu that I'm using is 14.04 32-bit systems. And the steps that you would be using for installing Jenkins. Now this is one. You could download the WAR file and then execute it. Or even easier, you could directly add a key, or to your source list you could add a you could add a source list to your apt-get and then simply download the package. I'll show you the other way, which is more easier, so that you don't have to worry about downloading the different WAR files, going through the URLs. Here it comes. It's more easy. We call it as installing Jenkins. So I say install Jenkins on Ubuntu. So this is the URL which is provided by jenkinsci.org website, which is the official website of Jenkins. Similarly, you could also find the installation steps for CentOS or Mac devices. For installation, you need to add the source listing here on these two lines, and then we would be doing the regular apt-get update and apt-get install Jenkins, or yum update and yum install Jenkins if you are on CentOS boxes. So I'll be following this. I have my Jenkins box running. What I would be doing is I would be connecting to this box using my SSH client so that it becomes easier for us to copy and paste the stuff. It's 56.60. I'm using PuTTY for connecting to this machine. That is the preferred SSH client on Windows. And let's make the stuff more visible. Okay. Get your sudo or add sudo to every command that I would be using. First things, add a source list. So very first I'm adding a key, then I would be creating a source list file for Jenkins, and then we would be doing the regular apt-get update and apt-get install Jenkins. That way we don't have to worry about downloading the WAR file. The next line is to create a source listing. There it goes. Copy paste, simple copy paste would work. Then apt-get update and apt-get install Jenkins. Jenkins is very easy to use. Okay, you don't have a lot of stuff to configure unless and until you need that. So Jenkins believes in not displaying all the stuff at once. If you need it, you install a plugin, you'll be getting an option only then. Okay, so updation is done. Apt-get install Jenkins should install Jenkins for us. It would need some time for downloading the complete package. There's a benefit in setting up the stuff like this. If you download a WAR file from Jenkins repository and then execute it like java minus jar and then your WAR file name, in that case you wouldn't be getting pre-installed scripts for controlling the services. Okay, what I mean that if you set it up like this, the trick that I've done right now, you could get a benefit of pre-set up all the services. So you could use something like this: service Jenkins start, service Jenkins restart, stop, status. Okay, you can enable the service at begin as a starter script in your operating system, so that whenever you um, restart your systems, Jenkins would automatically be running on port number 8080 by default. That's why I like installing stuff like this. Okay, another 1 minute to go, 1 minute 20 seconds and so. Any queries or doubt, anything regarding to Jenkins, or even if it is not related to Jenkins, I'm able to answer the questions. Um, you could ask any question related to DevOps or ecosystem that you're worried about. Okay, I wouldn't answer this question very specifically from Team City's perspective, but I would answer it as a generic question. So this question is that how is Jenkins different from Team City by nature, or by maybe from any other software? Like I said, Jenkins is a framework. Okay, it is just a framework which helps you coordinate the stuff. Now, plugins are there to help you out, to integrate with one another. That's how it is. What the other softwares would be providing you, they are proprietary softwares where the builder of the software takes care of getting the requirements all across the place and then add in a separate feature. If it's not there, you don't have any option left. Okay, most probably the features would be there. The mostly required features are already built in maybe Bamboo or TeamCity or Travis or Gerrit, whatever you use. But with Jenkins, it is provided as a plugin. If you need it, you install it. That's how the architectural difference is. But ultimately, what we are trying to do here is automate the stuff that we want to achieve as a continuous integration pipeline. And you could put in any software you want there. Okay, does it answer your question, Bishwadi? Another question is from Joseph. Is there any way to configure only user authentication via LDAP and user groups in Jenkins? Yes, there is a way to do that. Let's first see if my Jenkins is installed. Okay, so Jenkins is installed. It would be running by default on port number 8080. You could change it if you want to. So by default, it's running on port number 8080. You will just check it if it's still working. Netstat. It's TCP connection, by the way. So I will check for TCP, UDP both. TULP, grep on port number 8080. Is it blocked? Yeah. So Jenkins is using it. So let's check it in our browser. It's 192.168.56.60, port number 8080 should bring up a browser for me, a nice console for me, and it is the default Jenkins dashboard. So like you see, there are very less amount of options present here. No jobs created, nothing fancy, no security enabled for now, no LDAP authentication, nothing. So let's do something here. Okay, I'll just show you how many plugins are pre-installed, and we'll be setting up some more plugins for us. Okay, so on this tab, if you see the manage plugins area, I'll be connecting here. So if you see the installed section, install tab, there are a lot many plugins which are pre-installed. All right, let's guys just give me a minute. I have a couple more questions to answer here, which I need to type in because these people will not be able to listen me. All right, so I was talking of the plugins which come in pre-shipped with Ubuntu. So if you see the plugins listing here, We have got Subversion plugin installed. We have got authentication plugins already there. We have got Windows Slave plugins in present there. Okay, LDAP, JUnit. So pretty much everything that you need to cover on a Java project. Okay, so there should also be a Maven plugin installed. Yep, so there is a Maven plugin installed here as well. All right, we'll be making use of these things. One such plugin which is not present here is integration with GitHub or using Git. So if you have a Git server or you are using some third-party providers like GitHub or GitLab, Bitbucket, that integration is not present here. So we'll be setting it up. Okay, let's go back to the slides and see what we have here. So the dashboard that we were looking at, it was a bare dashboard. Bare dashboard as in there were no jobs created. Okay, and the new button here, it says create new jobs, or we could click on the new item that would help us create one single entity which we want to automate, and that entity is called a job. Every entities or jobs that you have created would be listed like this, showing some color codes. Blue is for success, red is for failure, gray is when the job is aborted or it has not been started yet. Okay. Uh, Once these questions that I've just answered, that is Jenkins deployable on other application servers? Yes, it is. So any server that would support a WAR file, you can deploy it there just as a regular web application, and you would get it running on port number 8080. But you wouldn't get benefit of setting it up as services. All right. Okay. Very first, whenever you have Jenkins running, your first step would be to configure the JDK and the build tools. But these days, we don't need to follow this step, just because if your system is having Java installed on it, if I can just hit Java version, and if it gives me a correct answer, I'm okay with that. Okay, my Jenkins can automatically detect and it can run. So what I've installed here, the Jenkins version, it is automatically running, right? So we don't need to worry about this setup. But if you want to set it up, it's under global configurations. So let me show it to you. In the Manage Jenkins section, which will take you to the admin panel, there is a configure system where we'll be setting the global settings. So in this global settings, there are some Maven configuration areas. After that, we have JDK installations. So if you want to use your own custom JDK instead of one which has been installed on this machine, okay, you could specify it here, or alternatively, you could set up the Java home path. So if you know what I'm talking of, on any of the Ubuntu systems, you could define the environment variables. We already have got one, which is the path variable, which everyone is aware of. There is another one which is called Java home, and then this one is required for Maven to run properly. Okay, so Java home we would be setting up. We don't need to worry about any of the configurations for now. It's all default. If you want specific Maven installations to be running, we can set it up here, or you could just add Maven to your default path, where if you type in mvn, it should work. All right, if you don't want to use environment variables, in that case, you could set it up here. I'll show you whenever we download Maven in this demo session. Maven and we'll do it when we need it. Okay, in order to make Jenkins work with Git, until now we haven't configured anything. I've just shown you the configuration screens. We haven't even created the jobs. Okay, so first things first, we need to secure this machine, right? So for securing this, I would go again to Manage Jenkins, configuring the global security options, which is on link number 2. Enable security. There are multiple ways to enable the security. Either you delegate to another servlet container, or you use Jenkins own database for storing your username and passwords, or use the existing LDAP setup that you might be having in your organization to authenticate the people. Okay, or use the default Unix username and groups which are available on that machine on which Jenkins is installed. I would use the one which says Jenkins own user database, and remember to allow users to sign up by default. What would happen if you don't do it? As soon as I click on save, the system would go in security mode and it will not allow me to log in, okay, because there is no user present on the system. So what we need to do, we need to allow it to we need to configure it to allow users to sign up just once in the beginning at least, okay, and once we have at least one user running, we could disable this option later on. So let me find it out. There's the authorization section where we would be switching it to logged in users can do anything. Okay, we are not going to enable it for anyone. Just apply, save. It's really that easy. Users, we don't have any users created for now. Let's create an account. So I will create my account, type in some password, and then my email address, sign up. This email address would be used by Jenkins to send you notifications. Alright, so now I'm logged in. If you see on the right hand side top, you get my name, which is Ashish, and you could also log out from here. Well, once I am logged in, I could then disable the setting for other people to sign up. Since I am the administrator, I don't want other people to mess up unless and until I allow them. Apply, save. Okay, now the next thing, I want a job, and what I want to automate is I just want to automate running the builds or packaging of the builds. You could add as many steps as you want, and I'll show you how to add those. Okay, but for a demo purpose right now we would be considering a small example. So what I need is I am going to connect to GitHub. From GitHub we are going to download the code, we are going to package it, and then we are going to deploy it somewhere. Okay, sounds good. Easy scenario. What the complete use case would be, the developers are committing their code to GitHub. Okay, of course after unit testing. From GitHub, my continuous integration server or Jenkins server is responsible for packaging it. What other things can Jenkins do for you? It could get the code down, it could check the check style, it could check the syntax, semantics, could build it. Okay, before packaging it can check the compilation and test all the unit test cases. Once that's done, it would be packaging it. It could also keep your packaged artifacts somewhere on the third repository. Now the binary repositories that you might have either would be Nexus or you are using Artifactory, whatever you are using, Jenkins can deploy that code there for you. It can also move your code from the Jenkins running boxes to some other box or some other machine, where that machine can take care of deploying it onto the production units. Maybe that box is your Chef workstation, or it could be your Puppet Master, anything, whatever you want to configure. So the underlying idea is that anything that you can configure manually can be automated using Jenkins. So if I'm firing 1,000 commands on my machine, if I put it in a nice build steps or create a script out of it, Jenkins can do it for me. It can automate anything that I'm typing in. The only part where Jenkins really fails is that it cannot provide uh, interaction in interactive mode of scripts. So if there is a bash script that asks you for your username and password, if there is a script that asks you question and answers which have to be passed, Jenkins cannot help you with that. So you need to make sure that any of the things that you're trying to automate with Jenkins can run without any human interaction. So if you're coming in from the Linux background, you know that if you try to SSH to another machine first, it would ask you for a username, it would ask you for a password. Next time, maybe if you want to add some keys, it would ask you whether you want to add that machine's fingerprints to your known host area. Well, that's human interaction. Once you set it up, next time you try to do SSH or run an rsync command from your machine to that one, you wouldn't be asked any username and passwords, right? It wouldn't prompt you for anything. And from there, Jenkins can pick up this stuff. So setting up keys or all the manual work has to be done before you hand it over to Jenkins. Remember that. Or for any automation, for that say, any tool that you are using. I'm creating a new job where I would be requiring to connect to GitHub. Like I said, Jenkins doesn't have Git integration built in, so I would be adding a plugin here. So go to Manage Plugins area, where we move to the available section where all the available plugins would be listed. Go to the filter section, type in Git plugin, or if you don't know the plugin name, you could simply find the plugins by typing Git. There would be many plugins which are available. Try the one that suits you. If you don't know which one, Google it out, and a Jenkins website can help you set up the things for you. Git plugin install without restart. So it would be installing all the supportive plugins if they need, or installation or updation, whatever it requires. It would take a few minutes. Okay, good question here by Joseph. Joseph asking, if I don't have internet, how to deploy the plugins manually? If you want to deploy the plugins manually, you will have to download a special plugin extension, or whatever the plugin files are, from the Jenkins website, and they would be having .jpi extension. What you could do is you could download them and place it into the plugins folder of Jenkins. Okay. Talking of folder section, till we have the plugins installed, I'll get you through the folders area. So here, default Jenkins installation happens at varlib Jenkins. While you are installing the Jenkins package, one Jenkins user is created on a system, which is also having Jenkins group, and its home directory would be varlib Jenkins. It wouldn't be /home/Jenkins. It would be /var/lib/Jenkins, where all your folders would be kept. Out of these folders, there are few important ones that you need to care about. Jobs, where all your job configurations would be kept. Nodes, where all your slave nodes would be kept. That means the configuration of the slave nodes would be kept. All your plugins goes into plugins directory. Let me show you the plugins directory, ls on plugins. So there are plugins which have got JPI extension to them. You will have to copy those plugins here. Next time you restart Jenkins, it would be taken care of. Now, since this is a home folder for Jenkins, if you add any of the keys, those keys would be added into a secret .sh folder. Now it's not there since we haven't added anything. Okay, if I have to do that, I could just say su on Jenkins, show me the path where I am. Okay, ssh keychain to generate the key for myself. That means for the Jenkins user. Done. And there would be a folder present here. Let me exit. If you see, there is a .sh folder created, which would be having all the keys. Well, if you are not using Java, Jenkins can be used to automate any stuff. It could be either C++ or maybe PHP projects or Python projects. Okay, so what you could do is you could also automate building your code and generating RPMs out of it. So if you know how to build the RPM files by writing spec files and distributing the content across the temporary folders that you would be having some source files there. Okay, if you know how to do that and you could generate RPMs, you can also automate that using Jenkins. Okay, so yes, Hemani, your question is legitimate and it can be done. I'll show you once we get to the building process so that you know how to add the build steps. Okay, so here is Jenkins. It's restarted, trying to log in, worked. Jenkins would be having Git plugin installed now. So it will be present in the installation, it would be present in the installed plugins section. Here it is. Okay. And where it is reflecting, it would be reflecting itself in the new item. I would be creating a job now. So when we want to create a job, what we would be doing is I'm using a demo uh, repository here, which is at this URL. Bacalio gameoflife.git is a project, okay, a demo project that we would be using, which has got its own unit test written. So we could use any repository that is available on GitHub. Just it should be publicly available, and we are not committing back to it. So we are not messing up with the code. So I would be using this repository for setting up a job for myself. Okay. So for setting up the job, what I would be doing is I would be creating a job in freestyle project. You can also specify that it is going to be a Maven project right up front. So you could choose a Maven job, okay, or an external job. That means if you want to trigger some another job on another Jenkins installation, you could also do that. Or if you have some requirements like you want to build the code on multiple operating systems at once using different environmental parameters, you could go for multi-configuration project. So I use freestyle project. We will call it as game of life packaging. Okay, so give your job some meaningful name. You could create one. Now how do we set it up? This job will generate deployable package. Okay, and description that suits you. Now there are options for discarding old builds. Whenever Jenkins job execute, it would generate few log files. It would generate some artifacts if you're packaging this stuff. And every time you generate these files, a few MB of space would be used up. And sooner or later, you would be running out of disk space. If you don't want to do that, what you would be doing is you would specify how many maximum number of builds that you would be keeping. You can also specify the number of days that you wish to keep the builds on that box. So I would say I just need 5 last builds. I'm not worried about any amount of builds there. On environmental scale, sorry, not environmental, on enterprise level scale, what you would be doing is you'd be setting up days to your release cycle. So if your release cycle happens every week, you would be saying that, okay, I need 7 days of builds to be kept there just for an investigation purpose. I'll keep just 5 for demo. If you want to pass any parameters to this build, you can add the parameters just like branch or version number or any user that you want to build the source code with, anything that you want. Okay, if you add it, you would be prompted to pass it whenever you start the job. I'll skip this for now, we don't need it. If you don't want to run this build, you could disable it. Okay, and you could execute the concurrent builds if necessary. That means if you want multiple instances of the jobs to run in parallel, okay, on the same machine, in that case you can check it on. Okay, that will allow multiple jobs to run in parallel. For now, since this is a bulkier code, I want it to run not in parallel but one by one. If you run the jobs in parallel, what is the drawback of it? It is a specific use case. The jobs should not pollute the workspace. It should not pollute the code. If that is the case, in that condition only, you could run parallel jobs, because what would happen is if you're running one job, it is messing up with the workspace, and you run another one in parallel, it would automatically be run in the same workspace. You are not getting different workspaces for executing it. All right. There's a question here: in what scenario we need concurrent builds? Well, we need concurrent builds when we are actually running something in parallel. That means if you want to maybe let me get an example straight. uh, Testing, or you are sharing one single workspace and all the jobs would be parameterized, would be triggered parameterized. So what I need to do is I have a use case here. I have 2 GB of code that I want to scan at once, and I know that If I happen to scan the code for check style first, then for the syntax, then for the semantics, okay, it would take a huge amount of time. So what I do is I would keep the same job. It would be parameterized. Based on the parameters, it would decide what has to be done or which particular target has to be executed. Okay, and during the checking, I wouldn't be polluting my disk. So what I'll do is I'll trigger the job thrice with 3 different parameters and it would work. Okay, that's the simplest scenario that I can think of right now. Another question here from Balendra. What is your recommendation for installing Jenkins in premise behind a firewall where we don't have direct access to the internet? Okay, if you don't have direct access to the internet, it's always good to download the package and keep it in your own source code repository. Okay, if you don't have internet, you definitely have got some yum kind of repository set up on the local. You could also do that with apt-get if you want to. So you can download the package, keep it there, and then install it via same process that we have used. Or even simpler, you could just get a war file and execute it with Java command. Okay, should work. All right, the next part here, we could choose Git. What's my repository URL? I must go back and figure it out. It was something like okay, github.com vocalio gameoflife.git. github.com slash vocalio slash game of life.git. All your Git repositories would be ending with .git. Credentials, I currently don't need any credentials since that is a public repository. Okay, master branch has to be checked out. You can set up the branches here. Now, I could choose between the different source code management softwares or SCM softwares. It could be CVS, there would be a Perforce version available. You could also have Mercurial plugin installed here that would be supporting Mercurial. Git is there. Subversion comes in pre-installed as a plugin. Okay, once you are having the source code on the disk, if you want to check it again, that what should keep this system running, that means what should trigger the job. In that section, you would be setting up building the triggers. So on the slides 2, there should be one build triggers. So on the build trigger side, you can trigger the build after other projects are built. So you could create it as a dependency. You could build it periodically every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes if you want to do so. Or if you don't want to load your systems with too much of builds, what you could do is if someone commits, okay, only then you would be running the build. In that case, you should be polling the SCM. And the frequency at which you would be checking your source code management software, you can manage it here. So 5 stars means every minute. For demo purpose, I'll keep it every minute. It completely depends on what is the frequency of your developers to commit and how fast you want to pick up the builds. Adding the build step. In our case, we would be adding a build step. We will set up top level Maven targets. And since we want to package the code, it's very easy to do so. I could just say clean and package. Okay, so the command that you would be actually firing here would be mvn clean package inside that workspace wherever the code is going to be checked out. Generally, the codes are checked out in a separate folder depending on which version of Jenkins you are using. Either it would be inside the jobs folder in your particular job. Let me show it to you. Here there would be a new folder created, game of life packaging. You see to that. You would be looking at multiple subfolders. Builds, config.xml would be holding all the job configurations. And config.xmls are actually present at every different levels. So when it is present inside a job folder, it would be holding the job configuration. When it is present at the root level folder, it is holding the Jenkins environment configuration. So the same file at different levels mean different things. And since it is .xml, it would be following the XML 1.0 version to write all the configuration settings there. Well, there would be another folder created when we start the job. It would be workspace. Okay, either it is present here or it would be present outside at the user content level. Okay, at the same level where we are looking at all these folders, there would be a workspaces folder. I haven't talked of what user content means. User content is a folder which will allow you to share your files over HTTP. whatever you drop in here would be available through your browser. So let me show you an example of it. If I happen to write something like this, 192.168.56.60.80.80, and I type in user content, you are looking at readme.txt, which is listed here. If I jump to user content from this location, cd to user content, and there is readme.txt. If I touch another file, now this file should also be listed here. Refresh and you're getting it. Okay, so you get an idea of what I'm talking about. Okay, so let's set it up. Okay, I was talking of deploying, right? And multiple steps that you can have. So if you want to check the code, or you want to deploy it, you want to copy it to some other location, there are plugins that could help you with doing that. If you want to create documentation, Javadoc can be a great tool. You can just trigger it. Okay. For adding any of the commands that you are able to fire on Unix systems or Linux systems and you want to automate that using Jenkins, you can simply add execute shell and you can type in your commands here. Let's say I want to rsync my code. I would say rsync, whatever my code is, whatever command I would be firing, I would be typing it here. Okay, we'll do this exercise once we have the code running and the artifacts would be created. For now, we would be invoking the top level Maven targets. If you install a plugin for copying the artifacts, you can, in the build step, you will look at some another option. If you install a plugin for executing Python code, you will be looking at that option there as well. By default, you have 4. You'd be adding more depending on the number of plugins you keep on installing. Another question here from Joseph, release notes can be published under user content. Is it a good practice? Well, yes, it's a really good practice. And what we do is not only release notes, we generally also publish the recent Java docs, whatever are present there. Okay, and there is a small framework that we have designed for ourselves. What it does is it would keep on monitoring all the job statuses which are happening. Okay, the latest reports that are being published. So you could have either your check style report, your, if you're running Python, there would be a PyCheck report which would there, or code mess reports, or any of the code level statistics that you are generating. You could uh, publish all those reports in that particular user content area, and you could share the URLs with the people. Okay, that's very good practice because it makes the developers aware of what the code status is right away. So they don't treat the DevOps persons as human keyboard. They wouldn't be coming back to you asking for answers. Everything is there in the dashboard. They go there, figure it out, and the work is done. So right now I'll keep it short, apply, save. Now, I don't expect the job to run right away because there are a lot many things that we haven't done in the background. We haven't set up Java Home. We haven't installed any Maven. Okay, we have just configured the job. We are expecting it to run, but it wouldn't run for sure. So let's first check whether it would run. If it doesn't run, we would be looking at the console output. That means the logs that it would be generating and fixing it one by one. So build now will trigger the job manually. All right, let's fix the bugs one by one. I told you anything that can be done manually can be set up here. So I'm using GitHub for the source code repositories. Let's go there first. I'll show you where it exists. It is github.com. All right, so this is the one that we are using, and it says git init failed, okay, because it didn't work. It couldn't even init. So this means git doesn't exist on that machine. Does it? No, it doesn't. So let's fix the bugs one by one. Apt-get install git should help you install Git and get going. So I'll be first setting up my machine to support Git commands. The plugins that Jenkins comes pre-installed with would be having their own binaries for Subversion as well. You don't need to install Subversion in that case. But for Git, the plugins that we are setting up manually will need some sort of help from the underlying operating system. You can keep asking the queries as it comes to your mind. We don't want to shift it to the end. Okay, so Git is installed. Am I able to fire it? Yes. So Git works. If Git works, we shouldn't be getting this error again. I'm going to run this job again and look for some another error. So if you remember, there's a funny quote which is about these kind of jobs. It says, if you're getting new errors every time, that means you are making some progress. So let's see. It says, unable to access this because it cannot resolve the host GitHub comma. Okay, it's comma. Let me fix it. How do I fix it? I'll go back to configure the job and change comma to dot. There must be a typo that I've made. Okay, there it is. Fixed it. Apply, save, build now. All right, so at least it's trying something new. So it is bringing down the code. No, Joseph, what I used is proprietary and it's not on GitHub. Another question here from Bhalendra, what would be the strategy to allow admin to update the plugins only the versions that are approved in an enterprise instead of allowing to update the latest available from the Jenkins plugin repo? It's all manual. You don't tell Jenkins to do the updation all by itself. Okay, and let me show you. On the configuration of global security, you could have metric-based security as well. So what we can do is we can limit it to only the admin. That admin can go and change the stuff which is inside Jenkins. Other people can only view and run the jobs. Okay, and Jenkins wouldn't update anything all by itself. It would show you the list of plugins which are supposed to be updated. So if you go here on Manage Plugins section, it would show you that the updates are available, but it wouldn't update it unless and until you approve, you check, and then say that it has to be installed. You could install it manually. All right, does it answer your question? Can you elaborate it more so that I can provide you with a complete answer on it? Okay, let's get back to this job. Number 4 is throwing an error again. So what it does, it says that we are able to get the code from Git. It's all done. But when it tries to hit the Maven command, mvn clean package, if you remember, we haven't set up mvn. We just said that the target should be clean and package. It automatically executed the command mvn. So mvn doesn't exist on my machine. If it doesn't exist, how do I make it exist? I'll have to install it. Okay, that's one way to do it. Either I install it directly from the package, or I download the packages from the Maven website, which would be either a binary package that I would be downloading and add it to my system's path. Either way it works. Get installed, Maven 2. Let's give it some time. It would need a lot of minutes to install and set up. I would shut it down. I don't need this version. I would be instead downloading the binary files. So it depends on what you're looking for, okay? And it's completely up to you how you want to go with the how you want to go uh, with solving that problem. If you want to install that plugin, you install it. If you want to install the package, you install the package. If you want to download the zip file directly, you go and download the zip file. So what I would be doing is get to my home directory, and I would be typing in wget on this zip. Now that's smaller. It's almost 8 or 9 MB in size. Instead of downloading 119 MB, which would be really a bulkier stuff to do and would take a lot of time, I would make it small. Because the building of code would take again much time. The repository is almost 9 to 10 MBs in size, which would take fairly a few minutes for complete build up along with the dependencies. Well, Balindra is asking a question that can we restrict the available plugin versions, okay, for a particular version, and we don't want to update it again after that. Well, Jenkins doesn't have that kind of locking provided along with it. At least I'm not aware of any of the plugins that help you do that. Okay, so we have installed, just download the Maven. So what I would do next is unzip Apache this, unzip is not there, so I could install unzip quickly. Okay, so there's Apache Maven installed. Either I could set it up in my path, or what we could do is even better. Binary, we could take this path as installation directory, go to Jenkins and try another option of it, like manage Jenkins, go to configure system, then we have an option of setting up Maven, if you remember, right? It says Maven configuration. Maven installations, I'm adding one. Or we could say install automatically, that would also work. If no, then we would be typing in the path to Maven home. Okay. /root/Apache Maven. Is it not readable for other people? Let me check. There must be some permission issues with it. Okay, yes, there seems to be reading writing problems to it. What I would do is I will change the ownership of that directory recursively to Jenkins so that Jenkins is able to access that. All right. Let's try it out if it works. If it doesn't, we'll set it up in the path itself. But what it would do is it would prevent system users from using the Maven command directly. Okay, Jenkins would be able to use it, but the system users, whoever are trying to fire their command, wouldn't be able to use that. Okay, doesn't work. Let's fire it again. So what I'll do is I will simply add a path. So let's add a path. We would export path equals to $path colon Apache Maven. Okay, am I able to fire the command Maven? No, because I missed the path. It should be bin. Ambient works. Right, it works. It says Java home environment variable is not set, so it'll be setting up Java home environment variable for us. I would ask which Java am I using? So it's this. There doesn't seem to be a JDK installed here, so I'll need to have a JDK installed as well. So let's do one thing. Apt-get install. Now things can be a little tricky when you want to set it up all by ourselves on manual side first, and then we can have Jenkins. So if you see, we have already configured Jenkins. Jenkins is all ready to fire the commands, but we are not able to do it on the manual side. So I would say open JDK, have 7 JDK package installed. Okay, it would take a few minutes. Just bear with me for a few minutes. We'll set it up and then we will fire the mvn command here. So meanwhile, do you want me to answer any of your queries, any of your more queries, which may not be related to Jenkins? See, we are already trying to fix the changes and then run it again. Successful build will look like a blue one. Okay, nice question here, that how can we build two different jobs which require different versions of Java? If you need two different versions of Java, in that case, you will have to set it up here in Jenkins. You could go to Manage Jenkins. You can again set up the configure system. Go there, it would ask you for JDK installations. Add the JDK installations. As soon as you add multiple installations here on the job configuration side, it would be providing you with an option to choose one for your job specifically. Balindra is asking, will the recording of the session would be shared for later access? Yes, you would get the recording in a few hours, as well as the presentation which is being used. So let's see what's the status of it. It would take another few minutes or so. I'll wait for it to finish. Okay, another question here. The question is from Joseph. What is the matrix build? Okay, so let's go back to the job configuration. Matrix build is a job when you have multiple targets to configure, or different parameters that you are firing on that particular job. So let's say in my job I have some command like this, okay, where I have the commands, very simple command, rsync everything from this directory. I do like this, rsync everything from this directory to maybe some distant machine whose IP address I'm not sure, or we are calling them by names. So this is node 1 on where I want to deploy the code, or they may be a UAT testing server number 1, okay, using some username. That's a very simple command where I want to push the code. Now if this command has to vary according to the different parameters, maybe if the job has been triggered with a different parameter, I would be changing UAT1 and I need to pass it to UAT2. All right, if there is some another parameter coming in or branch coming in, I would have to deploy it on maybe UAT number 3. So if this has to be configured, we don't need 3 different jobs to handle that particular scenario. What we could do is we could simply change it to something like this. UAT1 would be replaced by some parameter which I'll call as the deploy server. And this deploy server we can pass as a parameter at the top. So we would say that this build is parameterized and I need to add a parameter of type string, and the name of that parameter would be not dollar this time, it is deploy server. The default value would be UAT1. Okay, whatever description you want to provide, you can provide it. Next time when I execute the job, I'll remove it in a short while. Okay, if you see the build button, it changes to build with parameters. Now if I click it, it would ask me for the deploy server parameter. Okay, and next time we hit on build, the command that would be fired will actually be uh, rsync everything from this folder using someone user @UAT1. If I change it to UAT3, it would go to UAT3, and this is matrix configuration, or managing the configuration as a matrix, which we can change on the fly. Okay, that's what a matrix build means. So let me delete this for now, we don't need it. Again, this is also not required. Apply. Okay, what's happening in the backend, it again needs 3 minutes or so, so we can still spend a good 3 minutes answering your questions. Okay, another question coming in here from Atish. Do we have to install packages on systems also after installing Jenkins plugins? Yes. What plugins are? Plugins would be providing an interface, just an interface, okay, to interact with any other utility that is in the background. Like we have installed Maven, but Maven first should work on the system itself. We are just having the interface that would handle that interaction with for us. Okay, converting the targets to exact Maven commands is what the integration plugin is doing for us. But the command, it's not available on the system, so we are not able to run it. Okay, that's the only reason that we are setting up the stuff all by ourselves. But eventually, since we are not doing automation manually, we need Jenkins to handle all this all those things for us, like automating, generating commands, firing the targets, building up the packages, deploying it somewhere. If it has to be done after every commit every developer makes, you cannot do it manually. That's where Jenkins would really shine off. Okay, does it answer your question, Atish? Another question here, that where Groovy would be useful in Jenkins jobs. Example, passing the values between multiple scripts. Uh, Not sure. Definitely depends on what your use cases are. Okay, there's easier way. What we are doing right now, setting up Java, setting up Maven, you could do it on an easier front as well. Okay, let me show you how to do that. If you go to Manage Jenkins, Configure System, there is an option for Maven, right? Where we have set up our own Maven configuration here. On the Maven installation side, what we need to do is click on Install Automatically. Okay, in that case it wouldn't ask for any Maven home or those options. We can just install automatically, and it would install Maven 3 for us. Okay, I would choose it from install directly from Apache. Awesome. Choose a version, the latest one, and you are done. So you don't have to worry about any setup, any manual setup if your Maven doesn't execute. But for now, let's finish this one first. Nice question here from Balindra. Can you cover a little bit about dynamic slave creation using Dockers? Well, I could if there was a lot of time remaining. If time permits, I can show you how to add a slave, but that wouldn't be a dynamic slave, that would be a static one. With Dockers, we need to play a lot of with Dockers. We'll have to install Docker system first. Okay, but if you know what you're doing really good stuff. Okay, that's really a nice way of going with scalable system, which would be elastic according to your requirements. If you need multiple environments to be created to test your software differently using different configurations, you're doing the right thing. But we already have overshot the time by 22 minutes, so I wouldn't be able to cover that up in this webinar. Another question here from Atish, how can we set up master slave Jenkins setup? Well, if time permits, I'll do it. This is almost finished. So first things first, we will leave this job in running state, and the time that we would be getting later on while the job executes, I would be setting up another node as a slave. Okay, so should help you out. It's installing. Let's get it running. So what I want to do is I want to have another machine serving as a slave. So very first I need a machine, right? So I'll be creating one. I will call this as Jenkins slave. So you could keep on asking questions. I'll take your questions from your chat window, or if you want to discuss something, raise your hands. You're more than welcome to do so. Okay, so machine is created. Spin it on. What I need on this machine is another user that I would be using for connecting to that box. I need the machine's IP address. Okay, and the same user and IP address we would be using on the Jenkins master machine to connect to that box. Yes, we can. Okay, the question is, can we set up multiple Jenkins slave servers? Yes, you can set up as many as you want. Well, pros and cons of Jenkins open source software that we are using right now against the enterprise Jenkins from CloudBees. CloudBees are providing exclusive support for Jenkins, and they have got their special plugins that these people would be providing if you buy the Jenkins services from them. Okay, that's the only pro that I look at. So you don't have to set up all the stuff all by yourself. You'll be getting 24/7 by 365 support. Uh, you don't have to worry about setting up any of the CI stuff all by yourself, so that's a good part. Nice plugins that would help you integrate, which are not a part of open source community. But most of the times, if you have anything coming up from CloudBees, community people would definitely be creating some software or some plugin which would complete that and provide some same set of features with the Jenkins OSs. Okay, so no specific differences there. Again, a great question, Joseph. What protocol are we using to configure slave with master? We are using SSH. Fully secure? No problem with that. If config, okay, so IP address is 138, and I need to create another user that I would be using to set it up. So I'm going to create one. I will call it as user add and provide the directory to it as varlib Jenkins. This is where I would be setting up all the slave files, and I want that user to be given the shell bin bash, and username is Jenkins. Okay, done. So there should be varlib Jenkins created. cd to varlib Jenkins. Does it exist? Yeah, it does. All right, so this is all what we need. This machine IP address is 56.138. I would be setting it up on the Jenkins master. Jenkins master here, manage Jenkins. There would be an option to manage nodes. Here it is. And add master node is already added, which is the machine on which Jenkins is running. I'm clicking on new node. I will add one. I'll call it as slave. Okay, so this is a unique slave. Click on OK. It started. Provide a description if you want to, not mandatory. Remote root directory is mandatory, the one that we have created. Any of the groups or tags that you want to add this slave machine to, I would say that it is Unix slave. Okay. Launch method used via SSH, host IP address is 192.168.56.138. Credentials, we would be adding one. The credentials are Jenkins. Have we set up the password? Not yet. So I'm setting up the password for Jenkins. Or you could also set up the keys. Okay, so password is set up. I'm using the password here. All right, add it. Use the credentials. Everything good. Click on save and launch the slave agent. So it says slave is successfully connected and online. Okay, any problem there? Okay, let me check. We will be setting it up again. There seems to be some connection problem. Node. Slave is up and running though. Checking the log of it. Okay. Disconnecting and I would start it again. Launch slave agent. Okay, it says it's already connected. No worries. So the node is already connected. It's up. There are no errors on it. So if you want to set up a job to run on a particular node, what you would be doing is go to the job configuration. And now, since we have multiple nodes, there is another option present here, which says restrict where this project can be run. And you could run it on the slave machine that you have just added. Okay, so we have the slave machine or slave box where we would be running the job. You could click on apply and that would save your settings. Next time the job would run, it would run on the slave box. But currently, since we are setting up everything on the master node, I would restrict it to master system itself. I don't want to run this on the slave box. Get back to what we are doing. So we are here at user lib. There should be another folder called Java or JDK, so something like that created. cd jvm. Do we have anything here? Okay, it says Java 7 Open JDK 1.3. That's what I'm using. cd Java 7 Open JDK and use this as your Java home. So I'm exporting another variable here, export another one which says Java home, and Java home should be set up to user lib jvm Java 7 OpenJDK 1386. Okay, now try to echo Java home. Does it work? Java underscore home works. Awesome. What about mvn command? Does mvn work now? So I would say type in mvn if everything is fine on this box. So we are getting Java running. So Java is running. There is no POM file present on this project in this folder, so it is not running here properly. But with Jenkins, that should work. Clicking on build now again. Now let's see if it works. All right, did I miss any question? Joseph is asking how the master dynamically detects the slave based on the application. Well, it doesn't. Right now we saw that we will have to attach it there. Cannot run program mvn in the directory or no such file or directory. Let me check it again. Var lib Jenkins workspace game of life packaging. It's building it in some location. Okay. cd var lib Jenkins. Here we have workspace folder where the workspace would be there, cd game of live packaging, form.xml is present. So mvn clean package. Does it work? Okay, so it's working here. It is not working with Jenkins. That means there's some permission issue that we need to fix. Let's get to that folder where we have got the Maven installation. It's Apache Maven here. LL would give me the rights which are provided to Jenkins. M2 is still running as root. So I need to fix that. Change the ownership of M2 to Jenkins, or okay. Change the same thing for Apache Maven. Alright. Su Jenkins, am I able to fire mvn command? Path equals to, and we'll be adding another path here which would be /root/ Apache Maven 3.3.9 /bin. No, it's not available here with Jenkins. So what I need to do is I need to put the Maven folder here so that it is accessible with Jenkins. Let me do one thing. I will be making it accessible there. Copy Apache Maven and put it at varlib Jenkins. That should help. Okay. cd or cd to varlib Jenkins. Does Maven is installed there? Yeah, Apache Maven. Ownership is changed. Now I can jump to Jenkins, and here I could change my path. I could add it to the folder that I have just added. It's varlib Jenkins Apache Maven bin. Okay, mvn works. Still doesn't work. Oops. I messed up the path. So Maven is now working for Jenkins. Let's go back and try it out. Should work this time. Okay, it's working here. I think that the environment variables that Jenkins is picking up is from the older one. We need to restart Jenkins for this to take place. So for restarting Jenkins, I need one more thing to be done. We are almost done with, there's this last final step that we are struggling to fix. Service Jenkins restart. Nice question here from Joseph, that based on operating systems, can the master send the jobs to particular slave, that where to configure it? Okay, for that there's no intelligent way to set up conditions here in Jenkins, but there are just a few tools that can help you in do that. If you want to execute any code, Jenkins can help you execute the code. Okay, or there's a plugin which I don't remember what the name is, but it can help you decide which of the variables should go in that particular command, or what should be the variable values depending on a few of the parameters that you are passing to that particular job. But I'm not able to remember the name of it. Yeah, you're right. The first time Maven repo download would take time. Again, a few minutes to go. We have already showed up the time. So I'm really thankful to you guys that you're still sticking here with this demo. I'll wait for this to finish first, and then your job should work. Because we are able to fire the commands using Jenkins user, so it should also work from the plugin side. Any more questions that you have? Anything that you want to discuss or something like that? You can bring up the queries, since we are still downloading the Maven repositories for the first time. A few minutes to go. The executors that you're looking at here are actually the parallel executors. That means so many parallel jobs you can execute on that particular box. The thumb rule for providing that executors is very simple. The number of cores that you have on the CPU should directly be matching up with the number of executors that you would be running on that particular box. So if you have 32 core machine, you are free to add as much as 32 different executors. That means so many parallel jobs can run on that particular Jenkins box or a slave box. You could change these settings from the global configuration. So you could go to manage Jenkins, click on configure system, where you would be asked for setting up the number of executors. Okay, so currently the number of executors on master is 2. I could change it to 4 depending on the number of cores. If you want to set it up on the slave side, you could again go to manage Jenkins, then manage nodes, open up your slave box and configure it, and then you could pass the number of executors that you want to set on that machine. Okay, so you go back to your Jenkins dashboard and you should be able to see 2 executors here on the slave node as well. Another question here from Atish. In master slave server, what would be happening if the slave server is in the idle mode? If the slave server is in the idle mode, that means if there is nothing to be executed on the slave would just be kept alive. That depends on how you configure it. Okay, so there are multiple configurations. Let me show you. If you go to manage nodes and you configure it, the same question that you are asking, you can answer these the doubts here. Okay, you could keep that slave on as much as possible, or I could take this slave on according to a schedule, or I could take it on demand whenever there is a job supposed to be executing on it. If there is nothing supposed to be executing, turn it off or disconnect from that slave. Okay. Another query here from Joseph: how to hide or encrypt the password to invoke the job remotely by invoking the job URL? Well, if you want to remotely invoke that job, Jenkins can provide you with not a password. You don't have to use password for that, but Jenkins would be creating a token for you. Okay, and you could use that token as a post parameter. You don't use get parameters for triggering the jobs remotely. Let me see what's happening here. Now finally it's building it. It's another few minutes. No, you cannot log in into Jenkins Web using the token. For logging into Jenkins Web, you need a username, password, a proper authentication. Tokens are generally used by the scripts to trigger your jobs remotely. Okay, another question here. What is OAuth? OAuth is a method of authentication which is considered to be very secure. Okay, and it is a way of setting up authentication between two different remotely running machines or scripts. Okay, these days people are also using OAuth for authenticating the APIs. So there would be the keys that are given to you or provided to you, using which you would be connecting the system. Username and password authentication has been removed. The publicly OAuth was first used with Twitter. That's what I remember. I think we'll be spending a good 10 minutes again for the demo to finish and to wrap up the stuff. Yeah, Joseph says that now some of the firms are using Kerberos. Yes, you can also set up a few more stuff with Kerberos. Like if you're working with DevOps and you want to set up maybe NFS or something like that, it's very easier to set up Kerberos authentication using that. Okay, so you could go and use Kerberos instead of some other authentication protocols which are being used. It integrates very seamlessly with different packages. The ones that I've used is PXE systems, your NFS shares that would be there. Okay, on even machine authentication. Finally, the tests are executing. Everything is running fine. I'll wait for this to finish, then we can trigger the Jenkins jobs. Okay, good question here, Joseph. Which protocol is highly used in enterprise? Whether it is enterprise Git, whether it is SSH or HTTP. If you have your local repositories, it is always suggested to use SSH and not HTTP. It is easier to set up on the server side. It is more secure than HTTP because with HTTP, you don't just use HTTP, you'll have to use HTTPS. For that, you have to get your own certificate signed. And if you don't use some authenticated sources for signing those, you'd be getting errors all across your browser. Okay, that's why we use SSH in enterprise Git. If you are setting it up from some service providers, in that case, people may use HTTPS for general purposes when they want to use the systems in the initial phases, but ultimately they are also suggested to use SSH. Okay, finally we are done here. Let's go back to Jenkins and try executing it from Jenkins. I expect it to run. No. Okay, so that's weird. I think there's some problem with the directory or so, because the program MVN is now running, but there is some problem uh, with the folder structure, which is not able to be found here. So it says no such file or directory, but that's weird, right? The folder is present, the files are present. So what I'll do is I'll finish up with the session here. So I hope I've answered all your queries. Only thing that we need to do is we need to run this and get it working. And it is on the debugging part. On the Jenkins side, we have covered most of the parts and any of the questions that you might have, right? So if you still have queries or doubts, feel free to raise your hands or ask any of the questions you want. All right. So that's all I have for today's session here. So build was not successful. We are not able to finish up with the last slide, but it's okay. Although we have received all the stuff that are being covered on the slides plus more stuff. So regarding the survey, you'll be presented with a small um, feedback form that you would be filling it up. Okay, so there are very few questions, 4 or 5 questions to answer. It would really help us in increasing the quality of the material and as well as the delivery pattern that we are using here at Edureka. Thank you so much for attending the session today and have a great day ahead. Okay, thank you so much for sticking with me for a good 53 minutes, which are more. I really appreciate that. Thank you.